Hello, it's James from Marketing for Restaurants here. This is episode 127 of Secret Sauce, the restaurant marketing podcast. Menu engineering, the final touches for the perfect menu.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Really surprised. Have you listened to the last podcast that we did on restaurant leadership? That has gone gangbusters. And I think one of the reasons that is that there are so few people who are actually putting out a clear and easy to follow way that we can be better leaders. And it is something that I think everyone struggles with. I've been running businesses for 20 years and today I still think, how can I be a better leader? It's so important and it's so difficult to do. So if you haven't had a listen to that, check it out. Episode before that was the last episode in our menu engineering series where we've looked at the process that you can take to be able to create a menu that not only increases the amount of food that you're selling, but more importantly, increases the profitability of the food that you're selling. Because remember, revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. So what we want to be doing is identifying those menu items that are more likely to sell and those that we are able to make more money out of. Then you can tweak those. The last episode, we looked at the Boston Consulting Matrix. So by now, hopefully, you've gone through and you've had a look at all of the items. You've looked at your POS data to work out. And if you don't have POS data, then that's fine. You can be doing it just by rough gut feel. Some sort of decision, some sort of process is better than none. So by now, you should have an idea of which items are your stars, puzzles, plough horses, and dogs. So the stars, lots of profits, lots of sales. They're the ones that we like to have on the menu. Your puzzles, they're the ones who are high profit, but you're not selling enough of them. Plough horses, lots of sales, but you don't make a lot of money on them. And then your dogs, the low profit ones with low sales. And we talked about how you want to be thinking about all of these sort of items. You might have an item that is really great for getting people to talk about your restaurant coming in, and then they'll go back to something, their old favorite. So even though that menu item was the one that got them to come in, it may not actually sell, but you will get the sale anyway. So they'll purchase other items. And you might have those, some of those plough horses can be so important because that might be what your regulars are coming in for. Lose the plough horse, lose the regular customer. So the challenge there is, how do you tweak the menu? How do you tweak the proportions so that you can make it that little bit more profitable? Today, hallelujah, we're finally there. We're finally at the end. This is going to be the last episode on menu engineering. What we're going to do is we're going to actually put pen to paper. We're going to create the menu. And this is the last bit of the process. And we do it last because of the fact that you've got to go through all of those other steps. You've got to be thinking about the costings for each of the items. You've got to be thinking about the popularity of them. You've got to be thinking about the creativity and innovation process. I slipped that one in because you need to be thinking about, have I got the best menu items? Where do those new ones come from? You always want to have a couple of menu items there. They're going to be creating pressure. If you've got dogs in there that have got no good reason whatsoever for being on the menu, kill them off, go through the creativity and innovation process, come up with something, maybe something that that other restaurants are running, maybe something wacky, maybe something that you think is going to be super cool on Instagram. Plenty of reasons that you'll come up with new items, and more importantly, plenty of ways that you can come up with those menu items, and they're going to be the ones that you're going to put on the menu today, this week, this month, or this quarter. How often are you changing up your menu? That's a good question. First thing you want to be thinking about is, what is the menu physically going to be like? I've been to places where it's been something that's printed out for the day. I've been to places where it's been printed out but beautifully done. It looks like the ink is, it's been done with a fountain pen that's been using gold ink. And of course, we've seen lots of places where they're behind, plastic covers. think about the size, think about who's going to be using them and how easy it is. I've been to places where it looks like they've been going for the Guinness World Record of largest menu in a restaurant. That's probably a little bit oversized. You've got to be thinking about people who are going to be trying to manipulate this, going to be trying to work their way through it. Have a think about how many menu items you're going to have there and how you're going to break them into separate areas. Are you going to have starters, entrees, dessert? Are you going to have a separate dessert menu? That's an interesting way of doing it, because what it allows you to do is to have the starters and entrees, and then at the end of that, now, would Madam like to see the dessert menu? Now, they've planned on having a starter and an entree. They've had the starter and the entree. This is your opportunity to, and of course, you want to be thinking about what it is that your servers are doing here. So now, would you like to see the dessert menu? At the first hint of hesitation, we have a particularly popular sticky date pudding that you might want to have a look at. And then people going, I wasn't planning on dessert, but yeah, hey, why not? And so what we're doing here is we've constructed a little bit of a process where we can increase the upsell per seat. So your revenue per available seat hour is going to go up. Revenue per cover is going to go up as well. These are interesting ways that you can sort of make a few little changes that might be able to have a big impact on the profitability of your restaurant. I think you need to have a really good reason for having more than 7 items in your menu. And once again, think about what it is that you're trying to do. How many times are you trying to turn tables? Because the worst thing that you can do is say, well, we're going to turn the tables 3 times between 6 and 10. And then you've got a menu with 425 items, because there'll be old mate there sitting there going, well, hang on a sec, I'm only halfway through the menu. I know I've been here 25 minutes, but I need to go through. I want to make sure that I'm getting the best menu item. So it can be really difficult if you, particularly in somewhere where you're trying to turn the tables pretty quickly, you want people to go, yep, I'm going to have that menu item. It's also difficult to drive them to the ones that are going to be your high profitability ones. So if you've got a puzzle there, something that you're not selling too often, but you're going to use some of the tricks that we're going to talk about to try and turn it into a star, if it is one of 40 menu items, then it's going to be hard to do that. The other thing that I think is, and we see this a lot with, Chinese restaurants. I'm not too sure why, but they might be literally 100 menu items on the menu. And I think, what is it that these guys do really well? What's the one thing that they're super proud of? Because I'm not sure that they even know. With 100 menu items, seriously? Who's doing the analysis on this? Because there's got to be some things in there that just aren't selling. Do they really need to be there? As we're talking about the kind of things that you want to be doing with the menu, think about who your customer is and what kind of experience it is that you want them to have. In general, you're going to want to make your menu, sort of easy to read. I always find it really interesting. There's 2 big mistakes that people make when it comes to easy to read menus. The first thing is they use highfalutin words that no one really understands if they're not in the restaurant industry. A lot of these terms will be French. A lot of them will be very kitchen specific. They make sense to you. They make the menu you think sound fancy, but is it making it inaccessible for who your customers are? If you're aiming at a very high socioeconomic level of customer, then, maybe it's quite appropriate to have those in. But I think it's really important to think about the kind of language that you're using there. Next thing, which I think is really important to be thinking about, is how are you going to convey the price? So for each menu item, there's a couple of things that you want to be thinking about. 1, no dollar signs. Subconsciously, it makes people think money, I'm spending money. So it's a little thing, but it can deter people, and it can make them, they're not going to not order anything, but now that they're thinking about money, they're thinking about being price conscious. So they potentially are going to start looking at which items they should be choosing so that they can potentially save a little bit of money. They don't want to go overboard. That's probably the exact opposite of what it is that you're wanting them to do. So no dollar signs, avoid dotted lines and price columns. So what we want to do is we want to say that we're going to have our signature steak, and then right next to it, 32. So there's no column of prices where you can just sort of, because when there's a column, then you know what? So I've decided that I'm going to have some meat. I'm in the meat section and I'm looking at it, and wow, the signature steak is the most expensive meal, and it's expensive by $7. Maybe I'm not going to have that. Now, it may be some people like to put in a decoy menu item. So we're going to put the steak in. We don't expect to sell a lot of it. We're going to put it in at $48. And people look at it and go, wow, $48. That's really expensive. That means that when they look at the next most expensive item, which is potentially, say, $37, that's a lot more reasonable, $37. If that was there by itself, what would happen? And, I think really the most interesting thing that you can do with this is to test and measure. And we've talked about this in all of our marketing that we do. And we've talked about it, you've actually been going out and pulling some of your pricing data out of your POS system. So what about if you run for 2 weeks, you'll have your standard menu. And then what you can do is in the next 2 weeks, put in an item. So it's going to be super fancy. It's going to be by far your most expensive item. And there's a couple of things that we can play around with that, which we'll talk about in the way that we describe it and how we drive people towards it. But what we're wanting to do is to avoid people comparing them on a price by price point. What we want them to do is to pick the item that they think they're going to enjoy the most. So avoid price columns, avoid dotted lines. The next thing is, how are we going to describe the menu items? So if you look at for instance, the typical pizza restaurant, a pizza is described by the ingredients. Now, for a pizza, hey, that's kind of okay. I always think that it's good to have a little bit of a description about our thin crust is specially cooked on premise. We use a recipe from which we got when we were in Italy, and we use a special flour, and it's available in a gluten-free format as well. It's designed specifically to come out to be thin and super crunchy. We're starting to get a little bit excited about the pizza crust rather than, do you want thin or thick crust? Have a think about the target market for each and every one of the menu items that you've got. If you do if you're doing a gluten-free pizza, then the pizza is cooked in a separate oven, which we have only for gluten-free pizzas. This is one of the things that I find really important, is that you may have on your menu GF, which the gluten-free people will probably know. Important thing to think about when you're putting it on the website, the Google doesn't know that it thinks GF is girlfriend. So it's like thinking, well, here's a pizza and it's your girlfriend. That doesn't really make sense. You should have it there as, gluten-free at least, because that way it's better for Google to be able to index it. But I also think that when you're doing the menu, if you've got a gluten-free process in there, then it might be worthwhile putting a few little bits of extra information in there. It means that customers can be reassured, particularly, and one of the things that people think about or need to think about and often don't think about is what you're going to do with your menu. So I think have the menu up in the window, up on a little menu stand out the front so that people can walk by. Now, you might have a greeter out the front trying to grab people in. You might be doing samples out the front. One of the big things that you're going to want to do is to have that menu there. And I'm a big advocate for having that menu there because you're de-risking the transaction. Now, most of the time, the risk is around the price that you're going to charge. So we're walking by, there's me and my wife, we casually look at the restaurant and Tina says, are you interested in eating here? And I'm saying, there's nothing that I really like on the menu, which is code for, oh my God, have you had a look at the prices? There's no way that you're worth spending this kind of money on. Just kidding. But no way we're going to spend that kind of money. If the menu's not there, then I don't want to walk into the restaurant because what if it's really expensive? I just then look like, I'm really tight with money and I'm now creating a bit of a scene as we walk out without ordering anything. That's just dodgy. And you'll notice that some restaurants will try and cement the deal. They'll bring out the water. They may even bring out bread. It's kind of like, well, we bought bread out. You got to stay now. So price is a really big thing. I can look at it and it goes the other way. I might not want to be, if I'm trying to impress Tina, I might want to be making sure that I'm going to spend a decent amount of money, that the restaurant's going to be pretty good because I want to impress Tina. So it's like, this place looks a little bit cheap. Maybe there's somewhere better that I can go and spend my money. Same. If we're looking for a gluten-free solution, just putting GF there, maybe we need to have a little text box down the bottom. All of our gluten-free meals, or all of our meals can be prepared gluten-free, or the gluten-free meals on our menu are prepared in a separate part of the kitchen. We're very conscious of the requirements for for those adhering to a strict gluten-free diet. And we would welcome you to come in and have a look at our kitchen if you have any questions. No one would ever do that because you've completely de-risked the transaction by putting that information on the menu. Now, for people sitting at the table, probably not as important. If you're going to have it out the front, critical. I think absolutely critical. Definitely the pricing information and the descriptions as well, because don't forget we're trying to sell here. That menu out there by itself is going to be selling. That menu up on the website is going to be selling, which is why the description is so important. We gave the example of our pizza. I also think it could just be in the naming of the item. So what about Chef James's charbroiled steak? Signature charbroiled steak. If it's the most expensive menu item, and if you've put it in there as a decoy, maybe we do want to try and sell some of it if it's going to be at a really, really good profit margin. Chef James's signature charbroiled steak. How could you go past that for $47? It sounds like a complete bargain. The other thing is, so we've made that sound a little bit fancy. We've tried to justify the price point that we've put that menu item in. The next step is, what is it that you're trying to do? What is the effect that you're trying to create with in someone's mind as they look at that menu item? So let's go back to our example where we've got the separate dessert menu, which comes out and we're going to try and upsell because they've gone with appetizer and main, and now we're trying to get them to eat the dessert as well. And so we've got chocolate chip cookie on the menu. How does it sound if we say, this is Auntie Agnes's chocolate chip cookie? Well, that sounds fantastic. My Auntie Agnes, I remember her fondly from when I was a little boy. Cooked especially to her recipe. She would cook chocolate chip cookies for all of the family so that they would be ready as they got home from school. And the house would be filled with the smell of these beautiful chocolate chip cookies. Today, we're cooking them with exactly the same recipe, and we know that you'll love them as much as we did when we were growing up. Doesn't that sound epic? Now, the next thing that we want to do is we've got our say, let's say you've pruned it down to 7 menu items in each section. What is it that we can do to drive them to the high profit menu items, to either our puzzles or our stars? So both of them are high profit. The stars are high volume, the puzzles low volume. The stars probably don't need too much help. The stars are stars because they are a star. The puzzles, they do need help. So one of the things that you can do is maybe have that around a box around it. So here are our appetizers, and then there's a box around it. Make it stand out a little bit. Chef special. There have been some psychological studies that will suggest that many people will go with the first thing that they find. Not everyone is like this, and it depends on... We've talked a couple of times about Myers-Briggs. There are some people, the high Cs, they will want to go through and analyze the menu. I'm much more likely to go, I'm going to order that. I know that that's one of my failings, because then Tina will say, I'm going to have this. And I'm like, damn it, where was that? I didn't see that. I would have ordered it, because I'm a quick shooting kind of ordering kind of guy. But other people will go through it and they'll methodically have a look at it. But studies do show that the thing that people look at first, that becomes one of their preferences, and they're more likely to order that. So I think that it's worthwhile putting your puzzles into that place. Then, because what you want to do, you want to have them look at the puzzle first. That way it's in contention. If they're going to go with a star, they're going to go with a star anyway. If they're choosing between 2 menu items, I would want it to be a star and a puzzle, because either way I'm a winner, because it's the high margin items that we're looking at selling. There's also some evidence to suggest, so we've talked about the last one as well. So potentially they're the ones who are going to be likely to be ordered. And so you would want stars and puzzles, and puzzle at the top, star at the bottom. That way you're sort of setting yourself up for success. The next thing to look at is the use of photos. So this is obviously going to depend on how you are going to have the menu printed. So if you're doing a daily print, or if it's going to be, some sort of low quality print, then you're not going to be doing photos. If you're going to put a little bit more effort into it, then photos are one of the things that you want to think about. If we are thinking photos, then how many? Well, it's interesting. As I was doing the research for this, there is a bit of conjecture about this. I've seen multiple people say that you shouldn't have too many photos. What you should be doing is using photos to draw people to, and like typically you're going to draw them to your puzzles, okay? So, hey, here's something that looks really good. You might want to order it. And of course, it's high margin for us. That's a really good use of a photo. So like how we were going to have it sort of like in a box, sort of standing out, chef's signature, that single photo of all of the mains that you've got, that would be one of the ideas that you could run with. However, what is the purpose of the menu? So think about it. If you've got one of those big menus that people are going to sort of flick through out the front where there's a menu stand, then a lot of photos may be able to increase your menu's conversion rate. And like what you should do is technically how many people physically touch a menu and look at it. And if you had that out there for a whole day and someone was just watching it, you might get 120 people who flick through the menu. How many of those people come in? Realistically, you want that kind of data. And if you had photos and no photos, so what we're doing is we're doing an A/B split test there. So photos, no photos, or just a couple of photos. What is the increase in traffic that you get into the restaurant? Really, really important to know, because if you can get an extra 20 people in or an extra 20 groups in, your average group size 3.5, 20, 70 people, if they're spending $30, that's $200 a day, that's $10,000 a year, 70% gross profit after you take your food costs out, you're looking at an extra $7,000 in profit. That's it, that's a big number. However, realistically, that's not going to be the case. People don't do that kind of testing, and quite because there's a whole heap of work involved with it. That's fine. You may have a couple of photos in there. And really, it depends on how you're going to print it out. There are a couple of reasons why photos are important. Firstly, which we've talked about, is that where you're using your menu as a sales tool and it's out there all by itself and you're hoping that it's going to bring people in. Wow, look at that steak. That looks amazing and I'm super hungry. Look at those ribs. Look at that dessert. Look at whatever it is. In that particular case, what you might want to do is to ensure that you've got your best Instagrammables, the hungry worthy type photos that you can put in there. There's one other case though, and I've seen multiple people saying, don't have a photo of every item. Well, I am a person who has used a menu with every single item on it. And what is that specific use case? Well, 我会说一点儿普通话. I speak a little Mandarin. So I speak a little Mandarin, I certainly can't read it, and I certainly can't read a menu. So I've been to restaurants in Beijing, and I've been to restaurants in Taiwan where I have gone in, not one person speaks English, and that's been fine because someone comes up to me, I'm just like, I don't speak very well, but I'm going to have one of these, one of these, one of these, one of these. The price is there, so I've got an indication of how big it's going to be and how much I'm ordering, and I've got an indication of what it is that I'm going to get. It makes that ordering process so much easier. This is fundamental because I have made my choice of place to eat based entirely on the menu. This is a menu I can work with. If I don't have a menu I can work with, there's no point in me pointing to a menu item. I don't even know what I'm pointing at. What am I going to do? I'll have that random thing, that random thing, and that random thing. That could end in tears. So having those photos there, if you're in an environment where you're going to have tourists who don't speak your language, really important if you're targeting those tourists. And a lot of the time, the tourists will have good money that they're prepared to spend. It's interesting, particularly, when we're talking to restaurant owners in Asian countries, targeting tourists can be absolutely fundamental because they're often prepared to pay significantly higher. And I don't condone this because it's dodgy and you feel a bit ripped off when it happens, but I know that there's restaurants out there that will have two different menus. One for tourists and one for locals, and they're significantly higher. They're segmenting their customers and they're creating a different value proposition for those customers, and they're extracting the value that they believe that they're doing. Now, look, realistically, that's up to you. I think it's a little bit dodgy, and I certainly don't want that kind of thing. And you see, people will think, these people are preying on tourists. So something to be mindful of. However, a menu with photos for people who don't speak the language, that can be really powerful. And it will increase the number of people who come into your restaurant if you've got it on the window. Now, we've gone through everything that you need to be able to print out the menu. The next step is to reinforce the sales work, the great sales work that your menu is now going to be capable of doing. So your menu will highlight the most profitable items that you've got on the menu. That's really cool. What you want to do is to make sure that your servers are reinforcing that message. And there's lots of ways that you can do it. I think that the best way is that you cook that menu, that item up for the team before they come in for their meal, before service. And it sounds really good. It sounds really authentic. You know, the chef cooked this up today for us, and we were all really glad because it's our favorite across all of us here. This is the one that we love. It's his specialty. He loves cooking it, and it just tastes amazing. That is the way to reinforce. People are looking at the menu, they're kind of seeing the item, then they ask the question about it, or they're thinking about it. The server can then reinforce it. That will increase your sales. And I know that some restaurants will be tracking through their POS system who's selling what percentage they're selling, and then incentivizing those who are selling the most. That's a powerful way of impacting your revenue and, much more importantly, the profitability of your restaurant. That's really cool. Once you've got that in place, once you've got everything all the way from the costings of the menu, all the way through to getting your servers to be reinforcing the message that people should be getting those most profitable items, leave that for 3 months. And then you know what? You want to go back and you want to start all again. Has there been any changes in the costs from your suppliers? Has there been any changes in what people are looking for? Has any of your stars started to slip? Have the efforts around your puzzles, have they worked the way that they're being presented, the price point for them? Now, obviously, it's a lot easier to do because you've done a lot of the hard work initially, but you want to be doing it, I think, every 3 months. And potentially you might be doing that because you might have 4 separate menus. You might have seasonal menus. So you go through this big, long process, and then what you're going to do is in 9 months after you've retired a menu, you're going to go and have another look at it again to make sure that everything is relevant. Your supplier costs haven't changed, customer preferences haven't changed, all of those sort of things. But it is a process. You don't want to do this and then say, right, that's it. I can leave the menu alone for the next 5 years. You're going to be continually tweaking it. And I think one of the powerful things is to make sure that you're continually updating it. So whether it's a special of the day that is incredibly popular and profitable, and you're going to try that so that you're always putting pressure on the items that are a bit less profitable or a bit less popular, there's always pressure on them. If you're only going to have 7 items in each of the sections of your menu, that's what you want to be doing. You're going to be putting pressure on them. You're going to try something new. We had this as a special of the day last week. What's it going to look like over a week? If it's really strong, then we might take one of these ones off. And you can continually play with that. Now, we've talked about how you would continually want to play with that. It's difficult with a printed menu. We've been researching menus for about a year now, partially because of the fact that we wanted to do our little menu engineering spiel, which this is the end of, but partially because I think that the concept of the menu has been around for a very, very long time, and it probably needs to be updated a little bit. That's why what we're looking at is Menu 2.0. What we think is that it should go digital. It should be digital so that you can make a change, and that change then is reflected automatically for everyone who is looking at the menu. Now, it might be as simple as, I've been to a restaurant and I said, oh, can I have a bottle of this wine? No, we don't have it. Can I have a bottle of this wine? No, we don't have it. Well, what wines do you have? And it was the fact that they had a printed menu, they'd run out of some wines, and they just hadn't reprinted it, which, that creates a bad customer experience. What happens if you've run out of steak? So what happens if someone comes in at 9:30 at night and you're just about to close and you've done all of the steaks and that's it, there's no steak? You can take the steak off the menu. That's the kind of thing that we think you should be able to do. You should be able to upload photos. It should be nice and easy to be able to do that. You should be able to upload video. When you think about the fact that your menu is one of your main sales tools, is it really telling the full story, or is it just telling the story of the menu items? Your restaurant, your story, how is that story being told to all of the people who are looking at your menu? And today, for 99.9% of restaurants, pretty poorly. So we're really excited about Menu 2.0. It's going to kick off probably early 2020. It'll be one of our free/freemium type products. It'll be free for most people to be able to use, but the Menu 2.0 is just the start of the journey. There's so many more things that we can do with a menu, so many more things that you should be doing with your menu to increase the profitability of your restaurant. So keep an eye out for Menu 2.0. It's really exciting, and we're keen to push the technology as hard as it can to increase the profitability as much as we can for each and every restaurant out there. That's about it. You have a glorious week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.